Hello. So this morning, someone called Woof on Ian Hubert's Discord shared this image to the Assets channel, and I'm going to make it seamless. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag out some guides and just align them to points of the wall on the left side, and then use a transform tool to pull out the perspective and try and get it into a rectangle shape. That's Shift D for the transform tool, and I'm holding Shift to constrain it to vertical. So now it's more or less straight. I'm just going to get rid of the guides, and I'm going to blur it a pretty extreme amount just to see if there's any large scale darkness variation that I need to worry about. Thanks GIMP for having excellent GPU acceleration. And it looks like the lighting is pretty even, so I'm not going to bother with any of that. So I'm going to offset the image so I can see how the seam is going to look. And it looks like I need to do a bit more work on aligning, so I'm going to layer to image size, and this will delete everything that is outside the view of the canvas. And then I'm going to alpha to select and crop to selection. So when I hit Shift T again, I'm now just transforming this square, and this is a little fiddly, but it's worth spending the time here so that it tiles cleanly and you have a much easier job later. I'm only worrying about stuff up to the brick because the corrugated metal texture is not very useful. So I'm just wondering here if I need to take into account lens distortion. So I'm just going to draw some lines. I also thought these pink lines were a bit too fat, so I'm just clicking with the pencil tool and holding Shift to draw straight lines and using those pixel lines to determine if it's straight. And it looks pretty straight, so I'm not going to worry about lens undistortion. And we can go straight into cloning out some of these seam areas. And probably the best thing, especially with this kind of wall, is just get a grungy texture, and then pretty much anything you paint will look legit, even though you may be completely making it up. It's very noticeable when you have a smooth brush going over texture, but if you have some kind of texture in the brush that mimics what the original texture looks like, or the original patterns that are found in the texture, it's a lot easier to believe when you just clone something out, when you just slap some texture on. And here we go, Grunge 01, my favorite default GIMP brush. So there we go, I'm just trying to extend this dark region across and make it look like it doesn't just terminate abruptly. And then for the rest of the wall, it's just extending stuff left and right in a way that seems believable, and getting rid of any seams that are too obvious. I try and alternate between dragging stuff to the left and to the right so that it doesn't look like one seam. It looks like you kind of break up where the seam actually is, and that goes quite a long way to removing visual repetition. If you can't identify the exact point where the seam is, and it instead kind of wanders around and then naturally follows what the texture is doing underneath, it's a lot easier to get away with tiling stuff. So I'm just going in with a slightly sharper brush here and trying to mimic how the edge on the left looks a little more, because it's a bit obvious that the left side and the right side of the stain have different patterns on the edge there. And same here, I'm trying to dither in to the left and to the right the stain pattern and the light pattern. I'm sort of playing around with trying to steal some splotches from other points on the image. I think really I should go in and just extract some of these to use as brushes, and then I could do this a lot easier, but at the moment I just want to clone stuff and do it fairly quickly. So I'm not going to worry with that. And same here, just pushing stuff around left and right so it blends in a little nicer. I want to keep the bottom line intact a little bit with this moss and the pavement and stuff, because this little edge here where you've got the fine dirt, the moss, the grunge, and the leaves and debris and stuff, that's quite useful potentially, so I thought I would keep in just a little bit underneath. So I'm grabbing kind of edge stuff from left and right to just neaten that up. Also, the resolution of the edge is a lot better for these little pebbles from the image, because the right hand side of the image is the closest to the camera, so it's actually a higher resolution than the left stuff. So I'm copying a bit of that over to get more crisp detail, and then I thought I would just kind of smudge around the pavement where I saw fit, because it's actually quite satisfying. And there are some points where there's quite obvious distortions, so I'm trying to crop those out. So I'm just going to trim it down to what the final texture will be, and as I was doing this I thought I would just keep a little bit of the pavement, and then I sort of thought, yeah, why not, we'll see how far we can go. So I'm going to try and keep this bottom edge with the curb and the mud and stuff as well, and just doing that actually works pretty well. This bright green grass kind of pops a bit too much, so I'm trying to just use stuff from this edge, and because of the way the bricks are so degraded, it works quite easily to just kind of mix and match wherever you want, and it's not too noticeable because there's so much mud sloshed around and there's so much damage to the bricks that it's hard to tell if it's real or not. So that's kind of straightened them up mostly, and while I was doing that I noticed that the mud kind of worked really well with this cloning, so I thought I'll just try and take out the most noticeable seam. And then I thought, this grate is cool, but it has perspective baked in, and also it's going to be really noticeable if you tile it, so I'll just get rid of that and make it just kind of a muddy ground underneath. And same with these tire tracks. You can add your own tire tracks with decals and bump maps if you need them, but it's probably better to just have plain mud on the bottom. And then here I'm just trying to make the patches of mud look natural and where they come from. So I'm going to crop all the way to the bottom of the image and up to the bricks at the top. I'm just going to test out how the tiling works, and the seam looks pretty good. I was going to try and manually erase these top bits, but it's just not going to look good and you're going to be left with a little fringe, and it's also tedious, so I'm going to use the magic wand. I'm just going to go through, select all of this light stuff, just up the tolerance a bit, and then keep adding to the selection. And then just for these little pockets in here, I want to add these, and if it goes too far, just switch it to remove and take those little pockets out so that you don't have holes in your bricks. And there we go, that looks quite functional. I'm going to save that. I thought I'd just quickly see how well it performs. So loop cuts on a plane, drag this out, give it a bevel, give it some more geometry, and drag the mud out a little bit. And I'm going to just chuck an array on it and add a curve modifier and just kind of make a little path that it can follow. I'm going to add a ground plane, just add a mud texture here from textures.com. I also added a little bit of distortion to the mud in the texture by just white painting the bottom, and I did a bit of tweaking with the nodes to get a bit more out of the image, you know, fake a roughness and a bump map and stuff. And yeah, works pretty well. Alright, thanks for watching.